Welcome to an informal talk about AMCS, the Advanced Music Construction System. I'm Q. You can find out more about myself and this system at the official website amcs.thirdevent.net. In this collection of videos, I'm aiming to put together enough material for an hour-long techno set. This will eventually be recorded live and aired on the Inverted Light Source show I co-host. The set will consist of 12 tracks, progressively getting harder in style. These tracks are split into 4 sections, each roughly 15 minutes long, with an intro or interlude of some sort leading in. I will try to explain how to construct each track from scratch, and will likely edit out any boring bits or excessive waffling. Hopefully this will help gain insight into how AMCS works and how powerful the live performance aspect is. The Yamaha RM1x on camera will be used as a sound module. Only preset up on this are some of the dials are customized for tweaking, and all of the channels are set to maximum. The black box on the shelf is the WW7 workstation built by us. You can find out more about this device on the official website. So let's power on AMCS and make some techno. So, before we start making any sounds, this video is basically going to be talking through the preparation of the hour set. Because there's 12 tracks, it's very difficult for me to remember everything about the tracks, so I generally have notes which help me put the tracks together and also then help me do the live set and how it all holds. In this video, it's going to be pretty basic really. I'm going to be labeling the tracks. I know that seems a really sort of like, really? No music. But this is really important in doing an hour's worth of music because, like I said, my memory is shot from DJing in clubs and I need things to G it on. Let's get started, okay? We'll go to the track editor, and in the track editor, I've explained this several times on different videos and in exhibitions which I've done with AMCS. The tracks, they're not like in a traditional DAW where they go from the top to the bottom and then linearly flow time left to right. This is like tracker. Your tracks go from left to right, and then the time of the loops, because each of them are basically a loop, it goes vertically. So what we want to do is we want to sort of compartmentalize the tracks so we know for each part of the set. I don't want to get AMCS's tracks, which are the loops, mixed up with the tracks in the set, if you see what I mean. I don't really know another term to call the ones in the set other than tracks, of course. Just try and keep up with the differences between the track on AMCS and the track in the set. Yeah, so let's get started. This is the track editor. I'll open up the panel. Now the panel is basically all the functions for the track editor. There's a panel in each of the sections on AMCS. If you look at the sidebar, you can see there's some big buttons there. The top left one to start with is the filing system, or storage, depending on what you want to call it. That's the main system configuration, the equal sign. Then you've got the instrument editor. Another part of the instrument editor. The left one's the configuration, the right one's for actually editing the instrument or the sound, because it does waveforms as well, and it does effects as well. This is the track editor, which I'm in at the moment. That's the mixer, I'll explain that later. This is the event sequencer. For live, you probably won't be using this unless you plan to prep tracks. With the event sequencer, you can jump around in the event sequencer live and then play different parts of the event sequence. It's a different way of sequencing to how I'm going to show you in these videos. We'll be leaving that for these videos at the moment. But I may come back to that later, show how to construct a track for later just playing preset. Okay, that one's undo. The number in the top right corner is how many undos there are. There's up to 3 undos per section. So the instruments, the track editor, the mixer, and the event sequencer, their undos do not relate to each other unless, of course, there are things, say you remove a track or you add a track in the track editor, that will obviously affect the mixer, because obviously that's got to have the mixer settings in exactly the same place as what's on the track editor. This is toggle playback. That's to, you won't generally see this unless you use AMCS. This is lock. This is just basically, if you're playing back a set and you don't want to edit it whilst it's playing back and things go wrong, that will stop the editing. But it will allow you to recall all the playback, so that's quite useful. The tempo. If you DJ like I do, you will be wanting to change the tempo live. There's a couple of keys on the keyboard which allow you to do that as well. So I will actually change that first, because one of my criteria is in doing live stuff, and I know a lot of people are going to go, geez, that's fast, is I basically make music at 150 BPM. Now, 150 BPM, why do I use that? It's because back when I was using traditional tracker, 150 BPM was speed 5 on the tracker. It's related to the video synchronization. That's how they did the tempo on tracker. It was very limited tracker back in the day. But 150 BPM became something I settled on. There's another BPM I work out, which is 120, which is normally for the 3TAM stuff, which is another system I've made, which is DOS based, and that's more like mixing loops, sampled loops rather than MIDI. AMCS is just a ridiculously deep system. There's just so many factions to it. I will hopefully get through most of them in these videos, because I'm going to try and tackle the deep stuff in AMCS, because the thing is with the tutorials, I just was only scratching the surface. I wasn't making particularly cleverly technical music. I was just showing the cruts and the basic, you know, how to use AMCS as somebody coming from it, hopefully hasn't got a clue what tracker is, hasn't got a clue what AMCS is. Hopefully it was just a small, light intro into what we're doing. Whereas these videos are going to be completely different. I'm going to be going proper into the technical and basically explaining how deep AMCS can go in terms of things like probability, wave path mapping on the effects. Yeah, you'll get to see it. It's a crazy system. So yeah, so let's just set the BPM. I can manually type in the BPM, or I can use the arrows, but we're just going to type it in because it's easy. 150, there you go. So that's 150 BPM now. Right, so to get started, now we're not naming the tracks in the track editor. You do that in the mixer, but that was just a sort of an example of what we're looking at when you're editing in AMCS the loops. We're not setting up the loops at the moment, purely because, like I said, we're just labeling tracks, and I may set some instruments up. I'm not sure at the moment, so you may get some sounds. If not, that will be the next video, which will certainly be the first track in the set. Okay. Yeah. So this is the mixer. As you can see, I just clicked into the mixer. You can also tab into the mixer, basically tab through the buttons. But yeah, either use the mouse, use the sidebar. I'm just going to move the panel up. As you can see, you can move the panel around. Right, so as you can see, it's already got a label in there. I'm not showing the labels at the moment, so this button here says show the labels. You can't really see them very clearly over the light green. If I switch back to the track editor, you can see them. Probably could be a bit better contrast on the mixer, but for the time being, this is fine. Okay. In order to edit that label on the track, all I've got to do is literally click here, and then basically I can edit. This is a standard text editor. It's a bit weird in terms of you can have up to 32 characters in that box, so it's basically 2 lines. Now the reason it's split like this, which is important to the labeling here, is I can have that as T00, the lines split into 2 on the track labeling. If you saw that, if I left a large number of spaces in between T00 and intro, I've got them on separate lines on the labeling. That's our first label. Okay. Let's go back to the mixer, go to track 1, and right, we're going to do this as T01, and hopefully there, kick. Yeah. Okay. So if I move the panel out of the way, you can see track 1 is now the kick. Okay, so we'll go back to the mixer and we'll just keep doing that. Track 2, T02, kick. Now you might have noticed on this, I've got the kicks all together for the different tracks. Now the reason I do this is because when I'm building the loops up, obviously I don't want the rhythms to be the same, if you saw what I mean. So track 1 will be different to track 2, and track 2 will be different to track 3, and this gives me a pretty visual hint at exactly how all the tracks are laid out. Yep, 203. That should be kick as well. Right. And then the odd one out next is T04. It's going to be one of the breaks, or the interludes, as I called it earlier. It's not a break beat, but an interlude between the tracks. If you've ever heard any of the sets I've done, the interlude is normally just me playing either one of the sounds in a long way with a wave path effect going over it, sort of maybe bringing the filter in and out in a weird way. It's just literally just as a breakdown. It also helps me because obviously when we do the shows, the sets are generally required to be an hour long. And I mean, I know I can time it. You know, that's obviously the easy way to do it. But inevitably, things go over, things flow different ways, and it makes it a bit easier to sort of to concatenate all the sections of the set together. So I've got a bit of an overrun there in between the segments, and therefore I can squeeze the breaks down and basically then just edit it so it all fits into an hour. I think this one's another break. So yeah, let's back on the kick. Right, because this is hexadecimal on the tracks, I'm going to leave it as is. Obviously if you want to put 10 there, 11, you know, you can, but for me, I work with hex all the time mostly, so it makes a little bit more sense for me to have it as a textual formatting thing for it to be in hex. And then this one's going to be break again. T0D, kick. T0E, kick. And the final part of this block, T0F, kick. Now, this is where it changes. AMCS isn't just 16 tracks, which you can see at the moment. AMCS is 256 tracks. If you imagine the screen that you're looking at the moment's a 16 by 16 viewport, obviously on the mixer it's just 16 tracks. But if you want to go up to the next 16, you can do control and the cursors, and that'll take you up to the next 16. Or you can just scroll over, and that'll take you up to the next 16 as well. But for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the control and go at 16 because it just makes it a bit easier. As you can see, it says track 10, but obviously in hex that's 16. But I'm going to label it differently to what it says as 16. I'm going to label it as 00 again. And we're going to say that as intro again. And this is the start of a new block. Now this new block is going to be the toms. Why is it the toms? Well, because kick, toms, hats, you know, is how it builds up. They don't necessarily have to come in that order. I'll show you in a minute. You just basically mix it in as and when you want, how you want. There's no restrictions to how these tracks come in. If you want to break stuff down, bring stuff up in any way you want, AMCS allows that. But like I said, the compartmentalizing the tracks into 16-part blocks, it just makes it easier to visualize the difference between the rhythms. Right, so T03, there should be another tom. Now I know in normal cases with computing you could copy and paste, but because this is track editing and it's something I could set up to be reloaded later on, which is what I'm going to do. This is the only time I'll be editing these labels. Unless of course something goes drastically wrong, but I don't think it's going to. Okay, so we were still on tom, weren't we? Right, so yeah, we're on to the next break. 0C is a break. Right, and that's that run of 16 tracks then. So yeah, we'll go up to the next 16 tracks. Next 16 tracks. And these are going to be hi-hats. Obviously the first one is intro. This is hat. Should hopefully get progressively quicker as I do these. Now I know exactly what I'm doing. Right, so that's that bank of 16 done. And then the next ones are going to be snare. Double check I've got that right. Yeah, snare. So that's intro again. Don't do a bit too quick. Right. Let's break. Right, so we doing. So that's break, snare. No, not break. Snare. Almost I made a mistake there. I'll probably be able to change that in the next video anyway. If that had reared its head as a mistake. Right, so that's that bank of 16 done. And now we're doing ride, which is the ride symbol. There's a bit of a system to how these tracks hang together. I won't necessarily use the instruments named in the tracks, in the labels. Basically you can use the tracks for whatever, but this just sort of gives me, like I said, a guide to how pretty much what's next is going to be coming in on the recalling of the presets. I'll explain the presets in a bit. Well, in the next video, I should imagine, because that's when we start building the tracks. Ride, won't we? Ride, break. Right. It's easy to zone out on this and forget where you are. Break. You probably would notice that it seems that every 4 tracks there's intro or break. Again, it's because there are 4 segments and there's 3 tracks per segment when I play back live, and then you get your intro or your interlude in between those. Again, this is just a system. It's a personal preference. You don't have to use AMCS like this. This is just how I go about compartmentalizing, putting an hour long worth of music together. It's just purely because it's really complicated, and I'm normally having to turn it around in a really short amount of time. I mean, in the past it's been, I'd say 5 weeks to put together all 12 tracks and all the interludes. It's a crazy amount of time to turn around an hour long live set like that. And I do go back and think, has the quality of the tracks suffered because of that? But I don't think so. I think I kind of wing it and I get away with it. You see what I mean? The set's going to be rinsing regardless of, you know, what's going on. But at the same time, I like to have a little bit of integrity. The last thing I'd want is it to lack energy. It's something I pride myself on with techno, is you want loads of energy there. You want to make sure it really drives that dance floor. Because if it doesn't, it just feels flat, and then, you know, it's not techno as it should be, really. Right, so we're on to the next 16 now. Again, intro. And for these ones we are doing bass. I mean, I'm not sure why I didn't put bass next to tom, but maybe it's just the way I'm going to build it up. It's a system I've used in the past, so it works. I've done a multitude of sets now with this system. The sets seem to hang together pretty well. Right. Okay. We're still adding more track labels. Like I said, once this is done, save it, and then you can reload it. But I didn't want to show a video of me just loading the track labels in. I wanted to show how you set it up. Because like I said, if say you've got a system and you want to do your own thing, then this is how to do it. You may want to use 32 because you want to make it even more complicated per instrument. You may want to use 32 because you want to make it even more complicated. I'm not vouching for 16 being the absolute limit, because there's not. I have made techno in the past which has used 32 tracks. And the good thing about this, if I haven't used the tracks in AMCS in the tracks in the set, I can borrow them for other tracks. Like I said, it's not set. There's nothing set in stone at all. Literally the only thing kind of dictating how these tracks are used is the labelling. Right, so that's hopefully, I'll have to double check that because I went into the zone then. Yeah, all looks good. Yeah, so next 16 tracks, 60 to 6F. And we are on miscellaneous. These next 2 sections are going to be miscellaneous. Again, this is for anything I've decided, no, that's not a hat, that's not tom, that's not ride. What can it be? This is for general use. Because there's always going to be those sounds which you go, oh, well that doesn't really fit into any category. And I want to use it over the top. Generally you've got loads of, certainly on grooveboxes and any kind of workstation keyboard as well, you've got a load of sound effects. and some, you know, some interesting pads as well. And they're always worth sort of using as overlays. Yeah, this is another thing about AMCS. AMCS has a really big octave range, and it can use octaves outside of a standard keyboard, because normally on a standard MIDI keyboard it starts at 36 and then goes up to whatever. But the MIDI standard allows you to go from 0 to 127. AMCS will allow you to handle those octaves really far down. Sometimes when you get bass sounds and you slow them right down, you can hear the aliasing on it, and sometimes that works to make some really interesting sounds. Because aliasing can sort of introduce weird harmonics, and those harmonics can become phantom. It's a term I'll use in the other videos as well. Phantom sounds is a theory of mine that, I mean, I suspect it's to do with how your brain works as well. But you can have that kind of, if you mix two sounds or you slow sounds down, you kind of suddenly get a third sound or extra harmonics out of it. Even when you start mucking around a filter, you'll get things sounding like other things. That's where the whole thing sort of opens out and becomes interesting. This is the other thing, obviously, the method I use to putting together techno. I don't generally have a preconceived idea. I've obviously got a lot of experience from DJing, playing other people's records. You know, I can generally understand how they've constructed the music, and therefore that has influenced how I construct music. But at the same time, obviously making music, I don't know, over 2 decades now, I've got ideas about how I put things together. Back in the day, when I was a lot younger, because, you know, I'm ancient now, construction of stuff was very immature. I was a bit sort of just slings things together and was happy with it. But in the process of doing that, there were happy accidents. There was stuff where I just went, oh, yeah, no, I didn't mean to do that, but that sounds great. And those sort of ideas have built up and have stuck with me. They've sort of become a sort of something I'll accidentally crutch on, even though I don't realise it. Yeah, you'll see. I mean, a lot of it will probably be considered cheesy now. I don't know, in terms of, you know, oh, that's typically what you were doing in a 90s techno composition. But at the same time, like I say, because the turnaround of these sets is so quick, I do have to have those things to fall back onto. Right, so this should be the last one. So you might be wondering, I don't know whether you noticed, why am I only going up to 7F when AMCS can handle 256 tracks, and that 7F is 127, well, 128 tracks when you include starting from 0. AMCS allows you, and this is quite a cool feature, AMCS allows you to load in another composition that you've put together into the upper part. So you can do the lower part of 128 tracks and then the upper part of 128 tracks, and you can do that whilst it's playing. Now the good thing about that is, obviously, if you've got an hour's long live set and you want to do another hour's long live set straight after that, you can. You just load the next bit in, and then you switch the banks, and then you load the next set of tracks into the lower part, 256 tracks, and then into the upper part, and you could just keep going on forever. Like I said, and this can happen whilst it's playing. Right, so we're still on MESC. I'm not going to be demonstrating that in these videos though, because that would be hell of a set. I feel when you're doing a set, you kind of start to run out of energy about 45 minutes in, I think. I have had times when, I don't know, I've just sort of got into the zone and into the groove, and it's just all flowed and it's been fine. You know, a whole hour has been good. But at the same time, I like to think that if you've got a slot that you're DJing in, you want it to cool down a bit at the end because somebody's coming on after you. Now, I do defy that a little bit because by the end of my set, I will be hammer and tongs. It will be proper stompy by the end of it. But at the same time, it still gives whoever's mixing out of it at least a bit of a chance to break away from it. Yeah, so I think that slight loss of energy is good, really. But not so much that is, you know, you might as well go to the bar and have a drink. No, you want to keep the momentum going. I mean, when I originally developed this system, or my concept of developing this system was tracker. You make a song in that's it. You can't do a lot with it. I mean, the most I could do on the tracker I was using was to mute channels. Yeah, mute the channels. And I couldn't change tempo during playback or anything like that. So DJing with it was pretty much impossible, unless I just kept everything all at the same tempo, which wasn't great. I know you've got the pitch on the Technics. You can adjust, you can sort of back adjust, if you see what I mean, as you're coming into your own live stuff. I feel that's just kind of wasn't very good. And that's part and parcel, you know, of how this system came about. Because I thought, well, no, I really want to be able to pretty much DJ my own music. And this came about long before anything like Ableton was around. No, I don't think there was anything that allowed you to sort of mix your own music. None of the DJing software was about then. I don't think laptops were really they weren't underpowered, because I'm the wrong person to even say that, because I'd be a massive hypocrite, because I've written software which allows you to do 16 tracks of sampled sound loops, and them all mix real time, and you've got 24 effects, and it's absolutely insane. And a related note, AMCS has 32 voices of sampled audio, but they're not big sample loops generally. Don't get me wrong, if you had a breakbeat and you wanted the breakbeat to sort of loop over the top of it, that's only going to be a few seconds anyway. So yeah, you could have that, and you could have up to 32 of those if you wanted to go completely crazy, which is fine. But keeping it all real time is the crazy thing, and especially on the spec computers that certainly we've developed AMCS for. It was just completely unheard of back in sort of late 90s, early 2000s. It was kind of not thought about back then, I guess. But I was working towards that. By 2001, this is the system I had, basically. The tempo could be changed real time. I could bring in and out anything I wanted when I wanted. As I'll explain, there were presets. And it's kind of, like I said, it's opened up the ability to mix vinyl and mix my own music into it and switch and swap, and you know, it's great. So I've set up all the track labels there. So what we'll do is we'll go right back to the start. In fact, I'll switch the panel off, and you can see all the track labels are there. And as I scroll across, you'll see it'll go into toms, and then go into hats, then go to snares, then it's ride, and then it's bass, and then it's misc, and then it's misc again. Okay, so these individual sections of the the track layout, they're all the kicks. T01 kick there will relate to T01 tom there. Yeah? So that all the T01s, kick, tom, hat, snare, etc., they will form the tracks in the set. And like I said, the reason why I've got all the different track kicks concatenated together is so I don't duplicate the rhythms, because I mean it's all very well just having a 4/4 just going bang bang bang, but sometimes you want embellishments on it. You want it to do the typical thing of a run of 3 and then the fourth one being, just a slight flourish. On this, obviously, you can have much more than that. This isn't just 16 steps, as we call them, but it's not 16 step positions, it's up to 256 step positions. And as I'll explain in the next video, how you compartmentalize those steps into a loop, and multiple loops, with probability. I think that's pretty much everything I need to do on the labeling. So what we'll do is we'll just save that for now. So we go to the filer. I've got stuff on this SD already. This is just for when I do exhibitions. In the filer we've got new item selected. That basically says when I do a save, I just want to create a new item, a new file. And then I can later rename that item to something relevant. So yeah, so basically what we're going to do, we're going to save a song, and you can see it created a new item. And then I can rename that new item, and we're going to call it template, because obviously it's a template of my set. I can reload that template later, as long as I don't edit it now, because what we'll do is, in the next video, I'll create a track, save it as something else other than template, but we can keep that template if I need to do another set. Okay, so that should pretty much be it for this video. I hope you've got the gist of what's going on there. I know AMCS is quite deep. There's loads of icons here I haven't explained. I'm not going to explain them now. It's basically better explaining them as I go through. So I'll see you in the next video.